I am an alcoholic. My home group is the Thursday Night Study Group in Fort Lauderdale, and my name is Brian Haynes.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Glad to be here. Happy Friday. I'm gonna lose stuff. And you're right. She's got to be the best tradition reader ever. I think that's incredible. I mean,
I take her with me no matter where I share a meeting.
And I know that they're overselling me a little bit because people don't pay $25 to see me; they pay $25 to see Pat. So it's not really, it's a different. That's a whole different door. Yeah. And I'm grateful to do that. So, wow. So we're on a third step, right? We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. I'm always really grateful when I can actually recite the step. I know it's tough stuff, this speaking in AA. And I'm grateful because I'm grateful for a couple of reasons. Alcoholics Anonymous saved my life. I am very likely not alive today were it not for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was not really aware my first couple of years, but AA did not actually come easy to me. I actually was not in a position to make a decision in step 3 because I didn't ever get clear about the first 2 steps. And for that reason, anybody who's heard me do step series before knows that I'm very repetitive, especially with steps 1 and 2. Mostly because until I got clear about 1 and 2, the rest of the program was just noise. It was just noise. It was just stuff that I did because my sponsor asked me to or expected me to, or people in my group would ask me, would say, where are you at in your steps? And, I just, it wasn't, I wasn't oriented here properly. And I think the most important thing, I mean, we hear it all the time, the most important step, or the only step you can take 100% is step 1. I mean, we hear that all the time. And I would hear that, agree with it, and even say it. But even then, I was just paying lip service to it. I really didn't understand what it meant. I did not understand what it meant to be powerless over alcohol. I did not understand clearly what AA's solution was. And so based on those 2 things, I could not really make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God in step 3. And it was that Big Book seminar, which it's great. I'm honored to be a speaker at the Big Book seminar these days. But the Big Book seminar, I'm reciting Joe and Charlie at the Big Book seminar. That's really got nothing to do with me. I'm just lucky to be able to get a chance to do it. The Big Book seminar had such an impact on me because it was there that I heard 2 people who knew something about the Big Book talking about the doctor's opinion, talking about the allergy of the body, the obsession of the mind, how an alcoholic, once they take a drink, it triggers a physical craving inside of their body, making it impossible for them to control how much they drink once they have that one drink. And that despite that fact and all of the evidence of that in my life, I could not, just before taking that drink, remember with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of just weeks or a month ago. So one of the last times, I get out of jail, 90 days, I've been in jail, 90 days, maybe it was 60 days, I forget. And here's the thing, I was finally convicted of a felony charge. And I was on felony, I had to do a certain number of days, 90 or 60, and then I was going to be on 2 years probation. And that was my sentence. And after I finished my time in the county jail, When you leave jail on probation, I don't know how it is now. This is how it was 29 years ago. When you leave jail and you're on felony probation, you have to report directly from jail to the probation office. I get people nodding their heads. I guess it's still that way. And so I did. I went right from jail to the probation office. I didn't pass a bar on the way, I guess. I report the probation. And the probation officer that I sat with explained how probation works, and they explained where I was going to meet and who my regular probation officer was going to be. It's going to be up in Pompano, not in Fort Lauderdale, because that was closer to where I lived. And he did one extra thing that was a real solid, like it really helped me out. He said, "Hey," he says, "because you're on a possession of cocaine charge, you're going to have to drop a drug urine analysis your very first visit in a month from now." A month from now, I'm going to have to pee in a cup and they're going to test it. Wow, that's a great heads up. I know this, right? I know this. I make it 28 days. I make it all the way up to just the weekend before my Monday visit to the probation office. And I start drinking, which probably wouldn't even have been that terrible. But once I start drinking, I told you about the other problems that I have. So those came into play. And of course, I showed up at probation hoping like hell that maybe the guy gave me bad information and they're not going to test me. I was wrong. But that was the best hope I had. If it was today, I wouldn't even have bothered to show up because, today they get the results while you're still in the office and they just call the police and have them come, right? But then they had to send this stuff to a lab and, they wait a week to find out. And so I got to leave, which was good because, they ended up catching up with me in Georgia, and that story you've already heard. And when they caught me in Georgia, I was almost dead. I weighed 125 pounds when they arrested me in Georgia. I was at, I don't know if I'm alive at 123 pounds. That's not a good place for me. Allergy of the body, obsession of the mind. What I knew as a newcomer in AA is and I ended up in AA. I am a real alcoholic. I know I talk a little bit about drugs sometimes, but I have an allergy to alcohol and an obsession for alcohol, and my membership in Alcoholics Anonymous is sound. But I ended up in AA really thinking that I was a drug addict who was going to AA meetings because there was more of them closer to my home. I didn't know until I went to that Big Book seminar about allergy of the body, obsession of the mind. All of a sudden, this information, and now it's clicking. And this isn't every addict's story, but it's mine. I'm an alcoholic first. If you looked at my life, it was crystal clear that I was a drug addict, but not very clear that I was an alcoholic. Now that I know what alcoholism is, I'm looking at my past through the lens of allergy of the body, obsession of the mind, and I'm realizing my problem has been alcohol, and it's gone on longer than I thought. Right? And that my real problem is alcoholism. I almost never just went and got high on drugs. I almost always could convince myself it was okay to take a few drinks. And then once I took a few drinks, I would engage the allergy, and now I'm not stopping. Now it's not a few drinks, it's a few nights of drinking, right? And then, but really, even most of the time, the first night, as soon as I get lit, I'm doing everything else that I like to do. And I'm looking at my history. I'm going, I've been drinking since I was 12, and this has been going on for a while. I got a DWI as soon as I turned 16 and got a driver's license. The only thing that I needed to get the DWI was the driver's license. I was already drinking heavily, maybe even as an alcoholic. I don't know, because I never tried to quit. How do you know you're an alcoholic if you don't try to quit? Even armed with the information about allergy obsession, You can't know whether or not you're an alcoholic unless you've tried to control it and unless you've tried to quit. And until alcohol started creating problems for my life, like a DWI, and then getting a second DWI before ever getting the driver's license back from the first one. Like within 6 months, I got another DWI. Now, all of a sudden, it's becoming important to maybe change my drinking, and this is all before I ever started smoking crack, right? So in February 24th, 1988, it looked like crack was my problem. But after being in AA for a couple of years and listening to Joe and Charlie talk about the doctor's opinion, I went, holy shit, I'm an alcoholic. That's my first problem. That's my main problem. I cannot control my drinking once I start, and I cannot seem to quit. And here's the thing. I was sober a couple of years. I'm at this seminar, and I'm sober a couple of years, and I just know with certainty that I'm going to drink again unless I find the answer that you prescribed, which was a spiritual awakening. And the second step prescribes a spiritual awakening as the solution, right? If you read the chapter, there's a solution. Chapter 2, what is the solution? A spiritual experience as a result of the steps. Ideas and attitudes, emotions, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. That's the solution. That's the second step, right? The rest of the steps are a course of action that we take in order to engage that solution, right? Which the 12-step promises, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. So that's the program. Until I got crystal clear that I was powerless, I was participating. Look, when I went to that seminar, I was at step 10. I had a sponsor. I had a home group. I went to meetings almost every night of the week. I looked like everybody else in AA, right? I had no idea that I hadn't taken the steps. I had no idea. I mean, if you ask me, I had, right? But here's the thing. I was doing step work to get my sponsor, satisfied, or to get people in my home group satisfied because people expected me to. I wasn't somebody in AA who understood that I had a disease that was going to kill me, and unless I found a spiritual experience, I was going to succumb to it again and die. I was not here like that. And until I got here like that, and this is just me, maybe other people have a different story, but this is me. Until I got here like that, I did not make very good use of this program. I was not engaged in the rest of the program like my life depended on it. Or as the 12 and 12 says, with all the fervor with which the drowning sees a life preserver. That, and I realize that not everybody is the same, and some people come into it gradually and stay at it gradually. I was this person who was on that track. The way I look at it, I don't think that track was ever going to produce the results that I ended up getting by starting over and going, holy cow, I'm going to die unless I find a spiritual awakening, and then proceeding forward from there, which is what happened. Once I got information about, and that's why I'm a big book thumper. That's why you always hear me talking about the big book. 12 and 12 is a great book. I love the 12 and 12. But I didn't understand the 12 and 12 until the big book made sense. Until I understood the big book and the directions for recovery, the 12 and 12 made no sense whatever. I remember as a new person in AA, I don't know, 29 years ago, it was very common for a step meeting to be about the 12 and 12, not about the big book. I mean, the directions for recovery are in the big book, but the step meetings were always about the 12 and 12. And if you open step 1 in the 12 and 12, it says, who cares to admit complete defeat? I mean, they're starting after all the information you should already know about allergy and obsession. And they're only touching on it because the forward of the 12 and 12 even says it presumes that you understood the big book. It says that this volume proposes to broaden and deepen the understanding of the earlier work. So if you don't understand the big book, it can be hard in spots to understand the 12 steps and 12 traditions. But the 12 steps and 12 traditions is a great book because even in step 1, it explains something that seems to be sometimes, I think, lost. And that is that there were these high-bottom drunks later on who were able to admit that they were powerless over alcohol without having to lose everything in life, right? And to my mind, the beauty of the 12 and 12 is it points to the specific factor that makes all of them the same, that makes all of the low-bottom drunks and all of the high-bottom drunks the same. It's not how much you drank. It's not how often you drank. It is the fact that you couldn't quit and that you couldn't control it. That's the main factor. When we're telling our stories, it's great that I tell you that I went to jail and I was on probation and I couldn't make it 28 days without, that's all great. But the point of the story is that I couldn't control my drinking and I couldn't quit. The other stuff in the story is just the circumstances that surrounded that put my life in the position that it was in. So really, all of my resistance, I didn't have resistance. I didn't know that I had resistance. I didn't know that I hadn't completely given myself to the program. But until I knew, I didn't know. I don't know what to say, Until the third step is this pivotal point in recovery, and because the third step is where we make, if you just think about it, we read how it works at the meeting tonight, right? This is right before the book says we are now at step 3. How it works is this turning point in the whole text of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. Here's a bunch of information about the problem. Here's a bunch of information about the solution. We've given you everything that we think you need in order to determine for yourself whether you're powerless, whether you have the allergy of the body, obsession of the mind. Why is that? Because you're the only one that knows. It'd be great if you can come in here and just sit in front of a panel of us and we could say, yep, you're an alcoholic, but we can't. Why can't we? Because I can't know whether you've ever tried to control your drinking. I can't know whether or not you've ever intended to quit. I can't know that about you. Only you can know that about you. And so you're the only one who can say with certainty that you've tried to control your drinking and it hasn't worked out, and that you've tried to quit your drinking and you've been unsuccessful. Right? You're the only person that can do that. Where was I before I started talking about that? Step 3, how it works. All the information about the problem, all the information about the solution. And boy, did they overload us on information about the solution, right? I mean, the chapter for anybody who is up against it with the fact that AA is a spiritual program and they're asking you to make a decision in step 3. You see it coming when you're at step 2, right? To turn your will and your life over to the care of God. And for anybody who, after reading We Agnostics, which is basically saying, look, we don't care what you believe. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. We only ask that you be open to the possibility that there is a power greater than yourself. And if you can say that you're open to that possibility, if you're open to the idea that, what did it say? We just threw up our hands and said, we don't know. If you could just throw up your hands and say, we don't know, and take the rest of the action, we promise you'll get results, right? It even goes as far as to say that being an atheist or an agnostic is not an obstacle to having a spiritual experience, which I just think is just blasphemous. But it's not. It's not. Being an atheist or being an agnostic is not an obstacle to having a spiritual experience. In AA, you will see many people, and you'll see varying degrees of success amongst AA members, but none of that success tracks back to which God they have, or how often or which direction they're praying in, or all of the things. When we come up with the idea that it's God, all of us have these presumptions about what that looks like and what it means and what we have to subscribe to. And the chapter we announced is saying, look, just lay all that aside. Just take our word for it, actually. Don't believe it. In fact, it would have been easier if it didn't say God, if it just said Pookie. Because none of us would object to turning our will and our lives over to the care of Pookie. We only object because it's God. That's really the theme of the chapter We Agnostics. The theme is that all of us seem to be very, very willing to change our point of view about all kinds of topics, except this one. For some strange reason, this is the topic. Believe, what we think about God, whether we're pro or con or because hey, look, and I'm saying even if we're pro. So I thought that We Agnostics was for people who didn't believe in God. I believed in God. I skipped it. My sponsor agreed with me. Sorry, that's probably that. He did, which wasn't wise. Because what I didn't know is that the We Agnostics was not trying to convince anybody to believe. What it was really trying to do was ask us to let go of our current fixed ideas. And if I could let go of my current prejudices, my current understanding, and just say, look, I don't necessarily know what it is, but I'm going to do what you say in the hopes that you're telling me the truth. If you could approach that way, and that's why very often agnostics and atheists sometimes have an easier time in AA than believers, because they don't come in with a precondition. I got saved in prison before I came to AA. So when it came to the spiritual part of the program, I was going to a raise your hands, hallelujah, Catholic church, okay? Early sobriety, this is where I was going. The Catholics have been doing this for thousands of years. What are you people in AA going to teach me about God? That's my attitude. That's my attitude. That's what you couldn't get through, right? Because I wasn't powerless and didn't need you. But once I got clear that I was powerless, once I saw that, you know what, this spiritual experience that you're talking about, I haven't had that yet, and if I don't have it, I'm going to die, all of a sudden now, all of that's punctured. I didn't have to throw it away. I just had to be willing to be wrong. And once I was willing to be wrong, then I could move forward. Then I could make a decision to turn my will and my life for the care of God. Because what is that decision? That decision is a decision to go through the rest of the steps in the hopes of having a spiritual experience. Right? At the end of those four chapters plus the doctor's opinion, it gives us how it works. It says, rarely have we seen a person fail. We hope that you'll do this absolutely thoroughly and give yourself completely. Here are the steps we took. Right? Are you in or are you out? That's it. The rest of this is about the rest of those steps. Are you in or are you out? And the next paragraph says, convinced we were at step 3. Wow, why am I forgetting that? Which is that we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him, right? Convinced we were at step 3, we decided to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. The key point in this whole thing is a decision based on the fact that I'm powerless, based on the fact that you have found a power through this process. Forget about what the power is. That's the part that gets us all hung up. That's the second step. Get past that. It's not about what that power is. It's the fact that the people in Alcoholics Anonymous who have practiced these 12 steps have entered into a way of life that solved their problem. That's the fact. And so I'm making a decision at step 3, regardless of whether I believe in God or not, or whether I think my God is superior to whatever it is that you have or not. No matter all of that stuff, it doesn't matter, because I'm powerless and I must find, if I'm going to live, I must find this spiritual experience. This dramatic transformation of ideas, emotions, and attitudes has to happen for me, or I'm going to die drunk, believing or not. Right? So step 3, I decided, you know what? I'm all in. And it was the first time, after getting crystal clear about the fact that I was powerless, the thing that it enabled me to do, look, I ran around AA for the next 20 years. This is true. I ran around AA for the next 20 years, convinced that the difference before the Big Book Seminar for me and after the Big Book Seminar for me was that somebody who understood the Big Book told me the truth about what the directions were, and I was able to follow them and affect a recovery, right? And so I was one of those big book assholes that ran around AA telling everybody they got to do it this very specific way, which I still subscribe to. Hey, look, if you're going to be in AA, why not use AA's textbook? I mean, it just makes sense, right? So I still subscribe to that. But I know lots of people with good, solid recovery in AA who follow variations of what I think is right, and they have excellent sobriety and long-term sobriety. So I'm not hung up on following the directions, nor do I think anymore, looking at my story, based on the evidence of talking with people in AA and hearing their stories. I know now that that was not the difference. It wasn't because I did the 4th step the way the Big Book said instead of doing the Hazelden Guide, and it wasn't those differences. The difference was I for the first time I was in AA as a person who understood he was going to die if he didn't do everything it took. And once I was crystal clear about the fact that I was going to die, I was going to drink again, which for me means to die. I just say that because I just assume. I weighed 127 pounds 9 months before they arrested me the last time, 125 pounds the last time. I don't know if I'm alive at 123 pounds. So I just assume that if I drink, it's going to end up looking exactly the same, only worse. And at 123 pounds, maybe I'm not alive anymore. I'm 6'3" tall. I weigh 265, for God's sakes. 123 might be death for me, right? So I'm just, it's some assumptions there, but I think it's good calculation. It's a solid calculation that's working for me so far. Wait, some doctor's going to come up to me afterward. Oh, actually, you could actually wait. Oh, good. I got a couple months left. So I chose in based on that. I chose in. So the third step, and here's the thing. Based on the first two propositions, I was now all the way in. Like, I thought that I was all the way in. I did before that moment. I thought that I was all the way in. I was going through all of the motions. But I wasn't here like somebody whose life depended on this process. And now I'm here as somebody whose life depended on this process. And the third step talks about, the third step in the 12 and 12 talks about how the whole rest of the program depends on how well and earnestly we did step 3. Well, how well and earnestly I did step 3 absolutely depended on how crystal clear I was about steps 1 and 2. That's my experience. Because I did step 3 before I ever went to the Big Book Seminar. I had a sponsor. I was working steps. I had done step 3. I prayed with my sponsor. We did the third step prayer. But it wasn't as earnestly as necessary. I wasn't participating in recovery like my life depended on it. So once I got crystal clear that my life depended on it, all of a sudden now I'm participating at a whole different level. And by the way, just so that you know, everything about what I did and how I was here in AA changed once I got crystal clear about 1, 2, 3. It all changed. Everything. Every meeting I went to, every number that I had, every person that I called, my sponsor changed. I changed home groups. Everything changed after that point. Because now I became somebody who was a seeker. I wanted to know more about the Big Book, more about the 12 and 12. I wanted to go to step meetings where people were talking about the steps. I could get ideas about how to proceed. I became somebody who was fully engaged in trying to learn this way of life. I was going to meetings every day again, even though I hadn't necessarily been going to meetings every day at that time, right? So now all of a sudden, because I was working my way out of AA when I went to that Big Book seminar. Now all of a sudden I'm in again, and I'm going all the time because I know that I have to find this thing. And so the third step then becomes this pivotal point that I take, and it's the first step of which requires sustained taking. Right? The first step, I got some information. I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. That's done. Right? Once I got the information, I could make a decision about the fact that I knew I was powerless over alcohol. Once I got information about the solution, AA's solution is a spiritual awakening. Okay, I'm in. Let's go. Right? Done. The third step is the first step that even though we sort of take once, we take it at step 3 and then we engage in action. Right? By the way, when I took my third step with my new sponsor from the Big Book study group that I joined, after the Big Book seminar, after that, you know what my sponsor said to me? We did the third step prayer together, and he looked at me square in the face and said, "We'll see. We'll see." Because he knew something that I did not know yet, and that is that my life, my third step was not decided by how earnestly or sincerely my prayer sounded. It rested squarely on whether or not I was in action on the rest of the program the way that he would lay it out, right? He knew that he'd seen alcoholics come before Brian came, and he knows that when an alcoholic utters words, that's all they are. until the feet are actually in motion carrying out those words, this is just air coming off of our lips, right? My sponsor knows that. He hears me do the third step, probably sounded pretty sincere. It was really sincere in that particular occasion, but his response is, we'll see. And he showed me how to do the next step, and he gauged whether or not I had actually done a third step with whether or not I completed the next step. Or in my case, started and came back with some questions. But the third step is, because the third step requires me to decide today too that I'm going to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, right? The third step is the first step that we're going to do all the time, right? My life did not completely get turned over because I decided on one occasion to turn it over, right? My life is turned over when I continue to subscribe to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous in order to keep it turned over, right? So the third step becomes one of these steps, right? The first of the rest of the steps that require continuous action, right? But the third step is this turning point in the program also. The third step is not about alcoholism, and it's not even about believing in God. The third step is the turn to, hey, look, here's the new problem. The new problem is selfishness and self-centeredness. What? Wait a minute. What did they do? What did they do? This is the second time this is the second time the big book redefines my problem. The first time is in the chapter We Agnostics. It says, hey, this is all that stuff about allergy in the body, good stuff, but the whole point of it was that lack of power. That's our dilemma. Yes, I have an allergy. Yes, I have an obsession. Boil that down. What it means is I have no power whatever over alcohol. I don't have any power if I drink it, and I don't have any power if I don't. I am absolutely powerless. Well, if that's the case, that's my problem. My problem is that I'm powerless. I cannot stay sober. That's my problem. So in light of that problem, so this is the thing about Alcoholics Anonymous. We're not attached to whether or not you believe in God. We're not attached to whether or not you make a third step and do the rest of the steps. Right? We're not attached to any of that. The fact of the matter is, if you are an alcoholic, something dramatic has to change in order for an alcoholic to be able to sustain sobriety. I am not capable of it. I couldn't go 28 days knowing that they were going to test me. I could not make it. I could make it 2 more days. I am absolutely powerless over alcohol. So the first change is, hey, now we're not talking about alcoholism, the physical, mental, destructive illness that brought me to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're saying, look, we're past that now. The problem is lack of power. Now the problem is, how can I find a power that can solve that problem? Where and how to find that power is what the rest of the book is about. So they redefine the first step. They redefine the problem now by saying it's lack of power. It boils down to lack of power. I don't have the power to stay sober. Alcoholics Anonymous can show me how to find it, and here's how. They ask me to choose in. Here's the steps of the program. Are you in or are you out? I say I'm in. We'll see, right? We'll see, right? And then all of a sudden, now the conversation shifts to selfishness and self-centeredness, right? Now I have to find a way to live because, and here's the thing, I don't know the first thing about how to receive direction from a power greater than myself. My life now depends on receiving direction and inspiration from a power greater than myself, and I don't have a clue as how to do that. At least not to the extent that you do, right? And so now my problem is that I got to find a way to live that I can enter into this spiritual experience and remain there, right? And I don't know how to do that. And you tell me that this starts with the reduction of self-centeredness. It starts with me turning in my self-will, everything that I think that I know about me and you and the universe, all of that, right? My will and my life, it says, right? We turned our will and our life, my thinking and my actions. Everything that I think I know about my place in this world, your place in this world, and everything around it, illustrated by the actor who wants to run the whole show. right? Illustrated by, right? And here's Bill using a parable. He's using something he thinks we know about in order to teach us something new. And he's talking about an actor who's acting like a director, who's trying to arrange the lights and the ballet and the scenery and all of the rest of the players, right? And he says, this is how we are. And I'm thinking to myself, that's not how I am. Oh yeah, yes it is. Right? My job as an actor is to learn my lines and to get in character, right? But I've got myself engaged in everyone else's job. Isn't that exactly how I am? Isn't exactly my problem that I think I know not just what's best for me, but what's best for you? It's not enough that I have a driver's license and an automobile and enough senses about me to keep, like physical capability to keep my car in its own lane. I'm driving yours too, aren't I? Right? That's why my horn is honking and I'm cutting you off in traffic, and right, because I know how you should be driving too. That's exactly what Bill's talking about, isn't it? That's exactly what he's talking about. I'm not, and here's the thing. I have a plan for my life and yours that would be great. You will love it too. I promise you. It'll work out for everybody. It's a great plan. It's just not your plan. Right? But if you followed my plan, I really do. I have it figured out in a way that you don't know. You don't understand. And if you did understand, I promise you, you would subscribe and just get in line. Right? And I go through various contortions to try to get you to do so. Sometimes I'm an asshole about it, and sometimes I'm really, really nice. Right? But I'm going through contortions to try to get you enrolled in my plan because it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. It's my plan. Right? It's not, right? It's chaos. And everything about it is chaos, right? And what they're saying is that this is now what I have to give up. Well, that's not only barely understandable to me at the point of step 3, it really is. It's barely, like I almost can't even grasp what it is that you're asking me. There are glimpses of it. I kind of see it, but I don't fully grasp what it is you're actually saying I have to give up here, right? Because I'm not really kind of conscious of what this all is. But it's difficult. That's hard. That's hard to give up. You're asking me to give up what it is that I think, which is basically everything. Right? How I see myself in the world is everything there is. Right? You're saying, and it's like maybe, and here's what AA is really saying. Here's what I think they're really saying. They're saying maybe, just maybe. They're not saying you're wrong. They weren't saying, Brian, you're wrong. They're saying, Brian, maybe the way you think it is not the way it is. Maybe it's not the way that it is. Maybe that's not the best plan for you or them. I'm resistant to that idea. Even now as I'm saying it, I feel resistance to that idea. And I'm standing in evidence of them being right. My whole life is evidence that they were right. Everything that I valued, that I thought was important, that I would have made sacrifices for when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, none of that is important to me today. Not a single thing. Not a single thing that I would have made my life about even matters to me today. And the stuff that matters to me today, a lot of it I couldn't even comprehend when I was new. I didn't even know it was possible. You folks, you were really silly you would like read the promises at the end of the meeting. like, what is that? The promises, being read at the end of the meeting. I think it's great. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying that I was like, what is that? There was nothing in that even sounded like fathomable to me. It didn't even like that's really nice, but what is that? Like it's not a bank account or a car or a hot chick or it's none of the things that I think that are important, right? It's none of that, right? I don't even understand, right? Peace and serenity and happiness and joy. Are you kidding me? I don't know anything of those things. You are promising me things that I don't even know that I want. I don't even know it, right? And you're telling me that how I think it is might not be the way that it is. That my plans and designs for my life and everyone else's life around me is possibly caca. And that I should be willing to give it up in favor of whatever God has in store for me. Right? Hard. It's not easy. Right? That's why we can't do this one just once. Because I got on I-95 in Margate, or the Turnpike actually, in Margate today to make my way down this way. I had to do it 3 times while driving on the Turnpike in rush hour traffic. Right? Because I'm a nut. I'm crazy. I know how every one of you should be driving on the road still today. Right? I know how you should. It's my car. My car has one steering wheel. And I'm at my best when that's the only one that I have my physical or mental hands on. That's when I'm at my best, right? And it sounds silly. It's like, oh, here's a guy who's got 29 years. He's talking about being angry at people on the road. You know what? That's where I know where I'm at with the third step. In moment by moment, the way that I know is with whatever I'm doing at the moment. That's how I know, right? I can be absolutely insane doing different things, right? I know whether or not I've decided to turn my will and my life over to these 12 steps, over to God as I understand them, by however I'm being with whatever I'm doing. And this is sort of good news, right? Because part of the resistance to step 3 is, well, if I turn my will and my life over to the care of God, what the hell is he going to do with it? I remember Joe saying something like, I was afraid he was going to have me march in the Salvation Army band. And after him and Charlie had a little chuckle, he said, I never have seen a black man in the Salvation Army band, he would say, which I guess was true at the time. But they would have another chuckle. And so, I'm going to be like the hole in the donut, the 12 and 12. Like, what's God going to do with my life? And here's the thing. Here's the good news about that. Here's the good news about that question. God doesn't care about what you're doing. He cares about how I'm doing it. I can do whatever I want to do as long as I'm willing to follow his principles while doing it. That's the important thing, right? I can drive a car, not drive a car. But if I'm driving a car or riding a bicycle, how am I doing it? What kind of person am I when I'm doing whatever it is that I am choosing to do? That's what the 12 steps hone in for me, right? And that's how I know whether or not I'm engaged in the third step, whether I've really decided to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. I have a completely different belief system now than when I started, and it seems to have changed back and forth a couple of times. I've completely turned over, like everything that I think that I knew about God has absolutely evaporated and been recreated more than once that I've been in the program. So if the thing that you're hung up on is who and what God is and what he's going to have you do, that's not what this is about. That's not what it is. It's never been about that. It's never been about, it seems to me that God does not have an ego. He doesn't seem to give 2 craps about what name you call him and what church you go to worship him. He doesn't seem to care about the things that were so important to us, right? They get clear. I can't move forward unless I get the answers to these questions, right? Those things don't matter at all, because it seems that people make progress in AA no matter what they believe, and even when their beliefs change. Even atheists have spiritual experiences and still don't call God God. Guess what? The only one that cares is us. God doesn't seem to. Right? He only cares about what we're doing, not about what we're calling him or any of that other kind of stuff. But the third step is, at the end of the day, after all of that conversation, it still is just a decision. It's just the turning point. It's just my commitment to go through with the rest of the steps wholeheartedly with the intention of following his will. Which, that last part is important, by the way, right? Because it would be kind of silly to receive direction from God, which is what the 12 steps is designed to do. It's designed to place me in a position to receive direction for my life from a power greater than myself. It would be really, really silly and pointless to receive direction from a power greater than myself and not follow it. Right? Now, I'm guilty of that, right? But it's silly, right? So the intention in step 3 is that I'm going to work all 12 steps, not the first 5, or not until I feel better, or not until she comes back, or none of those things. I'm going to go through all 12 steps with the intention of turning my life over to God and receiving direction and following direction that I find along the path. That, thank God, I got into a position to do because I admitted that I was powerless. Because I absolutely had to. I'm not here because I want to be. I mean, I want to be now, right? But even still, if the 12 steps didn't require me to be an active member, helping others, if the program didn't actually require that, I wonder if I would still be here, even with all of the fantastic stuff that has come with it, over and above just not drinking, right? I didn't come here because I wanted spirituality. I came here because if I didn't find this power, I was going to die. And I like to think that I'm still here for the same reason. Thanks.
Okay, everybody, we're passing the basket in accordance with AA's 7th tradition, which